Save Sentinels! Here is Universe Unique. And today, the truth comes to light. Have you ever wondered how the hell Wolverine got his adamantium claws back after losing everything in the Wolverine? Because it doesn't make sense. Or rather, it didn't until now. Forget the crazy theories that Magneto glued the claws back on, or that he found a tube of mutant super glue. The true explanation is in the details that most people ignored, and it has a much bigger implication than it seems. Before we continue, a direct message from our secret core. The channel is about to reach an important subscriber milestone, and your support is more than just a click. It's a clear sign that you value content that respects your geek intelligence. By subscribing, you strengthen the resistance against lazy scripts and help keep this expanding universe. So, comment below. From which city and country are you watching this video? I want to know how far Logan's claws are reaching. And yes, I will read all the comments. If this content is connecting you with the truths of the multiverse, go ahead and like it and join our secret subscriber line. It all started there, in the scene where Yashida, the most treacherous villain to ever cross Logan's path, raises the adamantium sword and cuts Wolverine's claws as if they were rotten wood. Sharp cut with a serious soundtrack. It's one of the few moments where adamantium loses, and that alone says a lot. Because until then, the claws were. The claws were seen as invincible. But what this scene really destroys is not just the metal. It's the illusion that Wolverine is untouchable. If you stop to review the Wolverine, you will notice the symbolism there. Yashida didn't just want immortality. He wanted to rip out Wolverine's essence by the roots. He knew that regeneration came from the bone, the blood, the pain, and when he cuts the claws, he tries to cut that past as well. The scene works as a kind of ritual. It's the symbolic death of the armored warrior, and the return of the primitive animal. But there's a detail in this that no one talks about. The sword used by Yashida is not just any blade. It's made of the same adamantium that covers Wolverine's skeleton. In other words, it's adamantium against adamantium. But instead of canceling each other out, the impact destroys a part of the character's own legacy. This had never happened before on screen. And when it happens, it's not just a physical loss. It's almost as if the movie is saying, the Wolverine as you knew him died here. But then comes the question that every fan has been pondering for years. If the claws were ripped out in this movie, how in Logan are they back? Because there's no surgery, no re-implantation, no Magneto doing magic. They're just there, sharp, ready, and as lethal as before. And this is where the true theory begins to take shape. But to understand this, we need to go back to the beginning. Or rather, to the bone. After the fall, what remains is instinct. In the Wolverine, when Logan loses his adamantium claws, he reverts to the most raw form that exists, the bone claw. A state that many people think was invented there, but is actually the character's point of origin. In the comics, and also in the movie X-Men Origins, Wolverine, we discover that the claws have always been part of his mutant anatomy. They are not prosthetics. They are not implanted weapons. They are natural bone extensions, which were only coated with adamantium during the Weapon X project experiment. When Yashida cuts off this coating, what comes back is not a Plan B. It is the primitive form, the original living weapon, without filter, without restraint. But this return is not just symbolic. It has deep physical implications. For a time between the Wolverine and Logan, Wolverine remains with bone claws. This proves that his healing factor is more than regenerative. It is adaptive. It not only rebuilds what was lost, it reorganizes itself from the trauma. It's as if the body says, the adamantium is gone, but the weapon remains. And there's another detail that many people overlook. In the Wolverine, when Logan faces the ninjas, and then Yashida, he is already weakened. His healing factor is unstable. Even so, the bone claws return. In other words, his body, even damaged, still prioritizes the attack function. This is not just regeneration. It is cellular memory. His mutant biology understands that claws are part of the whole, not an accessory. But this state does not last forever. In Logan, the metal returns. The silver shine reappears. And then the question explodes again. If the adamantium was physically removed, how did it become part of the body again? Some people say that they are different timelines. That Logan takes place in an alternative line. But this answer, although comfortable, ignores a much darker and much more interesting possibility. And I will show you what it is. But before that, there is a flaw in the multiverse theory that almost no one noticed. And it completely changes what we think about Wolverine's power. Years after the loss of the adamantium claws, the first image we see in Logan is the most contradictory possible. The claws are there, metallic, sharp, intact. Nothing indicates that they were artificially reconstructed. Nothing suggests surgery, grafting, or magnetic manipulation. The shine of the metal is the same as before. But Wolverine is not. And that's exactly where the paradox sets in. If you accept that Logan takes place in a different timeline, as many people propose, the doubt dissolves. But this solution creates a bigger problem. It completely ignores the emotional continuity between the films. Because Logan from Logan carries the same trauma, the same exhaustion, and the same ghosts from the Wolverine. The pain is continuous, and the pain is the link. So if it's not an alternative timeline, how did the claws come back? The most accepted answer, and also the most coherent with mutant logic, is that the healing factor itself assimilated the adamantium to the over time. After years with the metal fused to his bones, Logan's body would have absorbed the element as part of his genetic structure. In other words, the claws are no longer implants covered in adamantium. They are adamantium claws, regenerated from scratch. It may seem absurd, but it's not. Wolverine's mutant biology is unique. In the comics, we have seen situations where he regenerated entire organs, parts of the brain, even the heart. And in Logan, what we see is a body trying to stay whole, even as the adamantium slowly poisons him. This paradox is essential. The metal that makes him indestructible is also what is killing him. And that explains the rusty, dull appearance of the claws in Logan. They no longer have the same perfect shine of the adamantium forged in the laboratory. They look organic, imperfect, as if they were generated from within, not placed from the outside. It's a clear visual clue. But there's more. The sound they make when they come out is different. Rougher, heavier. Everything indicates that there is no prosthesis there. There is fusion. But this fusion doesn't happen by magic. The idea that his body could regenerate adamantium seems impossible at first glance, until you remember that his body spent decades living with the metal, and that during all that time, he survived injuries that would have killed any other mutant. The adamantium was no longer a stranger in Logan's body. It was part of him. But this theory only holds up because there are much older precedents. And they are in the comics. In fact, in a saga that almost no one revisits, but that completely changes what we think about what is regenerable and what is not. I will show you later today, because when this piece enters the board, everything starts to make sense. There is a concept that few screenwriters dare to explore in cinema, but that comics have already addressed several times. Second-generation evolutionary mutations. They are not new mutations. They are the body's responses to extreme experiences. And Wolverine is perhaps the greatest example of this. His healing factor is not just a common regenerative ability. It reprograms the body from the damage suffered. Pain generates adaptation. The loss of the adamantium-coated claws, therefore, was not just a mutilation. It was an evolutionary stimulus. The body understood that adamantium was already part of its structural composition, and when necessary, it reproduced that structure. This hypothesis is further strengthened when we remember that Logan's skeleton was not removed. Only the claws were cut off. In other words, the bone cells with remnants of adamantium were still there, scattered throughout the system. Over time, the healing factor would have used this remaining material as a basis to autonomously reconstruct the claws. It's not alchemy. It's mutant biology. In the comics, we have already seen this type of phenomenon. In arcs like Enemy of the State, The Return of Weapon X, and The End, Wolverine's body surpasses limits that border on the impossible, from regenerating after, having the heart ripped out until it resists complete incineration. In many of these cases, there is a pattern. The body does not return to its previous state. It evolves, adds layers, corrects flaws, assumes the most efficient form possible for the moment. That's exactly what we see in Logan. The claws come back, not as they were, but as they needed to be. Less refined, heavier, more connected to the wear and tear of the body that created them. And the most symbolic detail of all this is that they appear when Logan is at his most fragile state. The metal that once made him invincible now poisons him. But still, he keeps using it. As if the body is saying, I know this kills me, but it's also what keeps me fighting. It's a kind of tragic symbiosis. And if you think that's too poetic, it's because you haven't seen what the comics did with this idea back then. Because before Logan, before any cinema theory, there was already a storyline that showed the adamantium returning. And it wasn't the healing factor that brought it back. It was something even more dangerous. In Wolverine number 145, published in 1999, Marvel delivered one of the most impactful turns in the character's mythology. And few people remember that today. After years with his body free of adamantium, Logan is completely coated with the metal again. But it's not the Weapon X project that does it. It's not any military experiment. It's the villain Apocalypse. In this storyline, Apocalypse offers Logan the chance to regain the adamantium in exchange for his servitude, a direct pact with the enemy. Logan accepts, or maybe is forced to accept, and is transformed into one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: death. The process is not surgical, it is symbiotic. The adamantium is not implanted with technique. It is reabsorbed as if the body was waiting for it, as if it had always been part of Logan. This story was controversial at the time. Many fans did not accept Wolverine becoming a horseman, but in retrospect, it revealed something fundamental about the character. Adamantium is not just a material, it is a bond. And Logan's body, even after expelling it, still retains the shape of the metal. When exposed to it again, the body reacquires it like an organism rediscovering its symmetry. This logic helps explain what we see in Logan. Because even though adamantium was not magically reapplied, as it was in the Apocalypse arc, the principle is the same. The body learned from the experience, and in the absence of an external source, it regenerated the structure based on internal residues, reinforced over the years. Another interesting detail. In the comic book, the return of adamantium is accompanied by a colder, more lethal behavior. In Logan, the same effect appears, but subtly. The character becomes rougher, more reactive, less rational. The claws return, but humanity fades away. It's as if the metal demands a price, not only physical, but psychological. And if this idea seems exaggerated, remember that the Logan in Logan is no longer the same. He is not the same man from the other movies. He is on the brink of collapse, and yet he continues to fight with the same claws that are killing him. The same weapon that defines him is the one that consumes him. But what if his body chose this form as a kind of final reaction? A last line of defense? Because what comes next suggests that this regeneration was not just an adaptation. It may have been the beginning of a terminal mutation. And that changes everything we thought we knew about the end of Wolverine. There is one last hypothesis, and it is the most uncomfortable of all. What if the return of the adamantium claws was not just a result of the healing factor? What if at that point, Logan's body was already in a process of terminal mutation? A kind of final biological reaction in which the organism, poisoned by the metal itself, tries to adapt desperately. In Logan, it is clear that the adamantium is slowly killing him. The blood is darker, the look more faded, the healing slower. But the claws are still there. There is no attempt to remove them, nor to avoid using them. On the contrary, the closer to the end, the more violently he resorts to them. And this suggests that the body no longer knows how to function without the metal. It has merged. Literally. This fusion can be seen as a form of biological reboot, not in the classic sense of a restart, but of a definitive adaptation. As if the body were saying, if this is going to kill me, then it will die with me. That's why the claws come back, not as an upgrade, but as a flexo of what Wolverine has become. A hybrid of flesh and metal, condemned by the weapon that was once his greatest advantage. And if that's the case, then the return of the claws is not a response from the healing factor. It is a symptom of the system's failure, an organic response to the inevitable end. The claws are the last manifestation of strength of a body that already knows it is going to die. This interpretation adds a tragic layer to the movie Logan, because it turns the character's iconic weapon, the one that always represented resistance and brutality, into a visual marker of collapse. And it closes the cycle in a melancholic but coherent way. The man who became a legend ends his journey with the same claws that made him monstrous. Now rusty, slower, but still deadly. And if this is not an epic farewell, I don't know what is. Now tell me in the comments, from which city, or even from which country, are you watching this video? I want to know where this theory is reaching. And yes, I read all the comments. And if you enjoy this type of analysis, with depth, real connection to the comics, and respect for the character, consider subscribing to the channel. We are very close to reaching an important goal, and each subscription is a way to prove that there is still space for true geek content, made with care, passion, and narrative weight. So, if this content has connected you with the truths of the multiverse, go ahead and leave a like and join our secret line of subscribers. Because here, even the claws have memory.